Hi there. Today I am actually going to do a video that is going to be very close to home for me, and as the title indicates, it is about domestic violence. What's actually prompted me to do this video is, firstly, I think there are probably a lot of us out there who don't make a big song and dance about it and just get on with our lives. I've been one of the luckier ones that I didn't end up being seriously enough hurt that I ended up in hospital or had to make a bolt for it and end up in a women's shelter or anything like that. But I believe that it is something that doesn't get enough open discussion, and that is what I plan to do today. Secondly, I have an amazing friend down in South Australia who has started up a not-for-profit organisation called Makeup on a Mission, and she is actually organising kits that are put together to be sent out to a selection of shelters throughout Australia and overseas, containing makeup and skincare for women who end up having to have to leave their homes, usually without being able to take very much with them at all. And makeup and skincare are things that don't get put high on the priority list. Usually when you leave a violent situation, you take yourself, your children, your animals, and if you're lucky, some personal belongings for yourself, your children and your animals, and that's pretty much it. My situation, I was thankfully only in the relationship for 18 months. But don't let anybody fool you into believing that 18 months is not a long enough time for enough damage to be done to have lasting impact on your life, because it does. He was an incredibly violent man when he'd had too much to drink. He was an incredibly placid man when he smoked marijuana. Placid to the point that nothing got done at all. And he was a very, very unpredictable person when he both smoked and drank. I went through stages where I had beer glasses thrown at my head. I would have him go into a fit of rage and drag me across the floor by my hair. He would constantly put me down. He would call me horrible names. He would belittle me. He would put down my friends. He would talk badly of my family. It's one of those things that you talk about, but people generally don't tend to either want to believe you or they can't relate to it if they haven't been in that situation. The best way for me to describe those 18 months that I lived with him was very, very relatable to a movie called Once Were Warriors. If you go and watch that movie, it is made in New Zealand, and I kid you not, we used to have lots of parties, and he was like Jake the Muzz, where all I had to do was look at him the wrong way or say the wrong thing and he would lose the plot. And it is scary. It is really, really scary. So, warning signs to look out for when you're actually in a relationship that is not healthy. If somebody can wake up every morning and say, "Good morning, babe, have I told you how much I love you today?" and then that night call you a revolting name or become violent with you, and it doesn't have to be physical violence. It can be emotional and mental violence that can have just as big an impact on you. In fact, for me, the mental and emotional abuse that I received from that man, and keep in mind I left him back in 2002 and it is now 2014, I still find there are things that I don't cope with directly due to that relationship. And yeah, I'm working through them, and I plan to continue to live the rest of my life having a ball, doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it. But mental and emotional abuse is just as devastating as physical abuse. So if someone can tell you in the morning they love you and then that night call you horrible names and be abusive towards you, that's not normal, that is not right, and you should not put up with it. They will ostracise you. They will try and ostracise you from your family and your friends, because in their mind they believe if they have more control over you, then you'll do what they want you to do and you'll do what they tell you to do. They generally tend to like to control the money situation because it keeps you feeling vulnerable and helpless. And if you don't have the money, you don't want to leave because you have no idea where you're going to go and you have no idea how you're going to survive or where you're going to end up. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them do drink, and I found I did anyway, one of two things. I either drank with him to blot it all out, or I tried my hardest, used every excuse I could find to not have us drink for that day. And this was a daily occurrence. This went on every single day. Someone who will pay you attention when there's people around and will make out that they are the nicest man in the world, and oh my gosh, how could you be so lucky to have someone who lavishes gifts on you and takes such good care of you and says beautiful things to people about you. Behind closed doors, they are a very different person, and that's what people don't see. My own family, it was only when my mum witnessed firsthand how quickly he could change, and it was like that he would change. That's when my mum realised that everything I had told her was true. And when people say to you, well, why don't you get out? It's very, very easy to say that, and it's actually very, very hard to do, because I had, at this point, no furniture of my own. We had purchased things together. I was working with him. We had our own business that we ran from home, which was actually very, very successful when he wasn't smoking pot and drinking. So I had no money of my own. I had, besides my personal things, I had no furniture of my own. I had bought things into the relationship like, typical things, a mirror from my 21st, my fish tank and stand, all my personal things, my sewing machine, my overlocker, the big sewing desk that I used, but I didn't have all my own furniture. The day that I finally decided I had to get out was the day that I realised he was also prepared to put his own then 8-year-old son at risk as well. And I basically got in the car with a friend with my 2 dogs and promised myself I would never go back. And he rang me that night, and he was very, very drunk, and all he wanted to know was where his son was. And when I told him his son had gone home with his mum, that's all he was angry about, was that I had stuffed things up because his son wasn't there when he got home. 2 days later, I did go back after he rang and begged and pleaded with me to give him a second chance. He promised me faithfully that he would go and get counselling. So I kind of listened to my gut, and I did go back for the afternoon, and basically he promised me faithfully that he wasn't going to drink anymore and that he was going to get counselling because he had many issues in his life that he hadn't dealt with, and one of them was to do with abuse that he had received as a child from a family friend. So he's gone out to drop some contracts off to another gentleman that we were working in conjunction with, and when he came back 2 hours later, he had beer on his breath. And I knew right there and then that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I grabbed my dogs and I said to him that it was not going to work. He then decided to get nasty again and try to abuse me into staying with him. And the only way I can describe that is he tried to put me down to a point that I would then believe that nobody else was my friend, nobody else liked me, and I might as well stay with him because that was all I deserved. But I just knew if I stayed, I would probably end up with him for the rest of my life or I would be dead. And neither of those were choices that I was happy to accept. So I left again. I never went back. 12 months later, he broke into my home, which was a very silly move because by this point I realised that if I could live with him and cop abuse from him every day, not a lot scared me. So let's just say that he left my house after the police had been called by neighbours, thank goodness. He left looking like he had done a few rounds with Mike Tyson. I did take out a domestic violence order against him. Best thing I ever did. Do not let them call your bluff. If you can find a way to safely remove yourself from a violent situation, do it. Take whatever measures you need to take. Save up money, open a separate bank account if you have to. Save up the money, put it aside. Do whatever research you need to do to find out. The women's shelters are amazing and they are there to provide you safety and support for when you need it the most. And that is when you've walked away from a domestic violent relationship. That is what they're there for. So do your research, find out what you need to find out. If there are apps on the market that you can actually add to your phone, and I believe there is one, I don't know whether it's in Australia, where it just looks like a normal app, but when you activate it, it alerts somebody that you're in trouble. If not, put numbers into your phone that will mean absolutely nothing to him, but as soon as you ring that number, the person knows that you are in trouble. It will be somebody who you never call, but they also know that if you ring their number and they see your name come up on their phone, that they are to put steps into action. Calling the police, organising for somebody to come to your house straight away, check that you're okay. They can use an excuse. They can just say, oh, look, I'm here to drop off such and such to her. She asked me to drop it off for her. You know, there are lots of little things that you can do, obviously within the relationship, to keep yourself safe, but that doesn't last forever. It's not healthy. It is tiring, it is draining, and it's soul destroying. I am someone who did walk away, and I am thankful every single day that I got out of that one particular relationship. If there is anything that anybody else takes out of today that puts them in a position where they finally decide, you know what, I've had enough and I am going to do this, it will make my day. It will make my year, because you can do it. Trust me, you actually can do it. It will be one of the hardest things that you will ever have to do, and it will seem scary and it will seem daunting, and it seems like you just won't ever be able to do it. But you can, and you will, and it will make the biggest change in your life. I ended up being given furniture. I went to Salvation Army and was able to buy myself some beautiful second-hand bits and pieces to start building up my own furniture again. I was very lucky that I had the friends I stayed with gave me the beautiful double ensemble that I had been sleeping on, and I eventually gave that back to them when I was in a position to purchase my own bedroom setting, so that I actually felt like I had my own things again. Going to court can seem a little scary. If you've got someone that is happy to go along with you, don't say no. It will also make you feel an awful lot safer if you have to go into a courtroom and he's going to be there as well. Because depending on how violent that person was, even that can be scary, thinking that you have to go into a courtroom and sit at the same table as the person who's been abusive to you. funnily enough, he's rocked up the day that I was taking out the DVO against him, and he turned up with 2 of his female friends, and they've rocked into the courtroom thinking they're going to be able to sit up the back and eavesdrop on what went on. And I could have got up and hugged the judge if it was allowable. He actually looked over the top of his glasses and he went, "You two, out." So they were this man's support to rock up with him and try and intimidate me and make me feel worthless, and it didn't happen. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. I had already been given approval that the DVO was definitely going to be put into play for me. I spoke with the police. There are plenty of things that you can do to keep yourself safe. The best thing you can do to keep yourself safe is to leave that relationship. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody being in a domestic violent relationship where he or she has taken steps to change the way they behave to become a more peaceful person. I won't say a better person because that's not fair, but a more peaceful person and happier within themselves. It rarely happens. And the old saying, "A leopard never changes its spots," is very, very true. I know that firsthand. So if you've watched this to the very end, thank you very much. I am going to provide a link to Penny's Makeup on a Mission. It's an amazing not-for-profit organisation that I hope a lot of people get behind and support. I have no doubt that if I had been in the situation where I wasn't lucky enough to go and stay with friends, and to be fair to this man, he was also very agreeable to me going back and getting all my personal bits and pieces. So I didn't have the added stress of having to go and replace all my makeup, my skincare, my perfumes, you know, all the things that us girls like to have around us. I was able to go and retrieve all that. But for the women who are not lucky enough to be able to do that, this not-for-profit organisation that Penny has put together through blood, sweat and tears is going to be one of those little treasures for women who, that's the last thing you think about. So a lot of these women's shelters are going to have these packs made available for all the beautiful women out there who are making a new start with their life and a much healthier start where they are going to be safe and they are going to be cared for and treated the way they should be treated, not the way they have been treated. So please go and have a look at the link that I provide for Penny. That's my dog, by the way. Come on. This is another thing that I took out of my domestic violent relationship. This is my baby girl. This is Logan. She was actually bought as a present for me the first year that I was with him. And I got her when she was 7 weeks old, and as you can see, she loves her mum. And she is one of the many valued and beautiful, beautiful things that I took with me when I walked away from a very, very unhealthy relationship. So thank you so much for watching. This is an insight into my life that I think is an important part of what makes me who I am today. So from myself and from my little girl Logan, have an amazing day. Love from me and my baby girl. Please keep yourself safe, and I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye.